Joe Biden just called out Xi Jinping, and the US president's latest comments are so intense, he might just have changed the entire trajectory of the US-China relationship. Joe Biden called China a ticking time bomb, citing China's growing economic challenges. Biden went on to state, "They've got some problems. That's not good, because when bad folks have problems, they do bad things." These are very interesting words from the US president. But did Biden actually mean what he said? President Biden has had no shortage of verbal slip-ups during his first, and hopefully last, term in office. The last time Biden personally met with Xi was during the G20 meeting in Bali, Indonesia last November. Biden warmly embraced Xi and swore by the One China principle, that Taiwan is part of China, but then returned home to sell more arms to Taiwan and enforce sanctions of the most advanced semiconductors to China. Other members of Biden's cabinet are just as bad. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen went out of her way to ask China for support of US Treasury debt and then traveled to Africa to warn African nations to beware of China's debt trap diplomacy. The Biden administration has quickly become a party of saying one thing and doing another. Joe Biden has claimed that decoupling from China is not his intention, but every action by his team is the complete opposite. Unfortunately, many Americans fail to recognize that anti-China rhetoric distracts Washington and boosts Beijing. But those aren't my words. In fact, it was a recent headline article on foreign policy written by Gregory Meeks, the ranking member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. In his article, Mr. Meeks pleads for a more common sense approach to the challenging US-China relationship, stating, "The China challenge is so immense, we must ensure that panic and fear do not drive US foreign policy as it had during the Cold War or the War on Terror. We must be cautious and clear about the consequences that a war or a full economic decoupling with China would unleash on the US economy and American families." You see, as much as we hear about decoupling from China, recent reports indicate the two-way trade between China and the US is a staggering $690 billion. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen spoke the truth last month when she testified on Capitol Hill. "I think we gain and China gains from trade and investment that is as open as possible, and it would be disastrous for us to attempt to decouple from China." What's incredible is that even the most sensitive and vital companies for America's own national security recognize the importance of working with China. Raytheon CEO Greg Hayes admitted in a recent interview that China is too big and too important for the US economy. The true irony here is that Raytheon is one of America's top defense contractors, manufacturing advanced weapons for the US military. But Raytheon can't produce the weapons the US military needs without buying rare earth minerals directly from China. Incredibly, China controls 90% of the world's rare earth minerals production. This is just one of a plethora of examples of why decoupling simply won't happen. Okay, so we've established the fact that the US and Chinese economies are deeply intertwined and rely on each other, but is America's anti-China policy moving the United States down a road of self-destruction? I want to share with you a fascinating article from Asian Times entitled "Biden's Contrasting Styles and Priorities." The Biden administration has concentrated virtually all its efforts on keeping China from rising, to no avail. The article is written by George Koo, a geopolitical insider who I've had the pleasure of interviewing before on this channel. Mr. Koo makes a very strong case the US is embarking on a dangerous path that will ultimately come at the expense of many American families. It all started when Biden first came to office. If Joe Biden had intended to resume a constructive relationship with China, he could have eliminated the tariffs levied by Trump on Chinese imports. Instead, he retained the tariffs despite hurting the American consumer much more severely than China's manufacturers. Now every product or technology coming from China is seen as a national security threat instead of an opportunity to buy superior products from the world's best manufacturing country. Let me give you a concrete example. Huawei developed the world's most advanced 5G network, but because of the US fear of being spied upon, Washington not only has refused to buy from Huawei, but we also pressured many of our allies to rip out billions of dollars worth of Huawei equipment already installed. So let's see how this is working out in the UK. In May 2020, the Financial Times published this article: UK draws up 3-year plan to remove Huawei from 5G networks. Now let's fast forward to August 2023 for the latest update. UK in danger of falling behind on 5G, analysts warn. You literally can't make up just how ridiculous this has become. Of course, telecom is not the only technology where China has surpassed the United States. China is now the world's leading producer of electric vehicles and holds a commanding lead on all battery technology as well. In fact, the New York Times recently published published this article entitled, "Can the World Make an Electric Car Battery Without China?" The answer is found in the opening paragraph. The countries that can make batteries for electric cars will reap decades of economic and geopolitical advantages. The only winner so far is China. Joe Biden thought he successfully rejuvenated the American microchip industry by partnering with Taiwan's TSMC to build a new factory in Arizona. But as I pointed out in my last video, the Arizona plant is quickly becoming a major struggle. Rising costs, culture differences, and a lack of skilled American workers have caused huge problems. TSMC thought they could solve the issue by bringing in 500 Taiwanese engineers to help, but American labor unions are now moving to block the work visas for these much-needed workers, once again causing more delays. But the most interesting development that has taken place over the past 10 years is the development of China's Belt and Road Initiative. Mr. Koo makes an interesting point in his essay that China has more friends than the United States has allies. Let's examine this thought further. Last September, Pew Research published this article entitled, "How Global Public Opinion of China Has Shifted in the Xi Era." It's an extensive report that basically concludes with one major thought. Most countries now have an unfavorable view of China. But are the results of this survey accurate? Most people who read this report miss one very important detail. Pew Research only interviewed the United States and its closest allies for the survey, and completely ignored the opinions of the Global South. How can Pew Research call this a global public opinion when countries in South America, Africa, the Middle East, and parts of Southeast Asia have all been ignored in this important survey? Meanwhile, over 150 countries have become beneficiaries of projects and investments through the BRI. At reasonable financing terms, China supplies their expertise to build infrastructure such as ports, railways, highways, bridges, airports to enhance the economic development of the recipient country. The BRI has quickly become China's most effective tool for making friends around the world. Meanwhile, the US can only stand on the sidelines and throw out insults by calling these BRI projects debt traps. All of these factors contribute to one final problem in America, and it's so big that it will absolutely change the future of the US economy as we know it. But before I reveal this large problem, I want to give a huge thank you to today's video sponsor, Beam, and share with you how this health supplement has fundamentally changed how I sleep, and as a result, drastically improved my quality of life. I know many of my YouTube audience is above the age of 40, and as we age, sleep becomes more and more difficult for us. In my job, I'm constantly monitoring global events, often up early in the morning and staying up late at night. And over the years, I've been struggling to get consistent sleep. Beam's signature product, Dream, is a nighttime blend of powerful ingredients like reishi mushrooms, magnesium, and melatonin, all designed to improve relaxation and improve your sleep quality. And here's what I do now. About 30 minutes before bedtime, I simply mix in 1 scoop of Dream Blend into hot water and stir with the Beam frother. Not only am I sleeping the best I have in years, but my favorite part about this product is actually the taste. I've been drinking the peanut butter cocoa and cocoa cinnamon blends, and honestly, it's like having a little treat before bed. The best part is there's no sugar and only 15 calories. As always, you have my promise as a content creator that I only recommend products that I've personally used and tested. I've been taking Beam for a couple of months now and feel confident I can recommend it to all of my subscribers. If you struggle with sleep and are looking for a healthy, natural solution, simply click the link in my description and use my code CYRUS to get 35% off your first order when you subscribe, and then 20% off all following orders. Plus, when you subscribe to Dream Powder, you will receive a free frother with your first order. You can pause, skip, or cancel at any time, so there's no risk to you. Now, back to our story and how America's anti-China policy is not only distracting and make America weaker, but in a strange twist of tales, it's actually making China stronger. I reported this earlier in the week that scientists of Chinese descent are leaving the United States at an accelerating pace. This is dangerous for the United States because the future of our economy depends on attracting world-class immigrants from around the world. Since 2010, the US has lost over 20,000 ethnic Chinese scientists. And here's the important part, all of whom started their careers here in the United States. The top destination for these scientists? You guessed it, mainland China. This story broke earlier this week and just shows how toxic the anti-China sentiment in the United States has become. Genius biochemist Kun Liang Guan returns to China from US to head new lab. After working in the United States for more than 30 years, biochemist Kunliang Guan just accepted a position at Westlake University in Hangzhou. Guan is a recipient of the MacArthur Genius Award, but was the target of unfair investigations from the National Institutions of Health. Over 250 ethnic Chinese scientists have been victims of this initiative. Guan now joins his former colleague Fu Xiangdong, who is a neuroscientist and works full-time studying treatments for Parkinson's and other degenerative diseases. Just as this New York Times opinion piece states, like it or not, the US needs Chinese scientists. The article reveals the biggest truth Americans need to hear. Concern about Chinese influence threatens America's ability to attract the top talent it needs to maintain global leadership in science and higher education. We've already seen this play out at the TSMC factory in Arizona. I've made a deep dive video about the struggles of TSMC Arizona factory. Watch to the end of today's video and I'll drop you a link so you can watch that video as well. But here's the main takeaway. If America doesn't address their anti-China issue, it's going to develop into a crisis long term, which is exactly what many industry insiders are predicting, like this report from All About Circuits, which states semiconductor skill shortage may escalate to crisis by 2030. While the Communist Party of China has succeeded in doing something most American politicians can't, that is uniting both Democrats and Republicans around a common cause, we must make sure that America doesn't lose its focus on what made this nation prosper in the first place. The United States is an immigrant nation. The only reason our population is increasing is because of immigration, not birth rates. If America was smart, politicians would take advantage of China's rising youth unemployment and welcoming in more young Chinese immigrants. We should be flooding American universities with Chinese students to study STEM research and make up the large gap of Americans who lack these skills. If America doesn't capture this new wave of immigration, other countries will, and it could be countries like Canada who continue to welcome more and more Chinese immigrants who will have the brightest future. Everyone, thank you so much for making it to this point of the video. Once again, thank you to Beam for sponsoring today's video, and make sure you take advantage of today's special offer and use my code CYRUS to get 35% off your first order when you subscribe and then 20% off all following orders. Sleep is the most important thing in our lives, and I'm grateful to have a partner like Beam who helps me make quality YouTube videos by getting a perfect night of sleep. If you want to learn more about what's really going on in the Arizona TSMC factory, click here to watch that video, and I look forward to seeing you all in our next video soon.